you. So food waste is a thing I can't deal with. All right. Well, I'm very, very excited about our panel today. We're just very fortunate to have some representatives from EUCOST that really got very short notice to fly over here, and I'm so grateful that they're able to be here and share a little bit with us about the EUCOST program for those of you not familiar, and also their programs in particular. So we have 4 speakers, and we'll start with Sheraz who will give us a little bit of an overview of the EUCOST program, and then his cost action that's funded working on the OneHealthdrugs. I think what we'll do is let's have all the speakers speak, and then we'll take questions at the end. That might be a more efficient use of our time. All right, I will welcome up Sheraz.
Thanks for the introduction, Marissa. So I've got 2 presentations. One, firstly, to begin with the cost action itself. Some of you might be familiar with that initiative. So a few slides on that, and I'll move on to how we're trying to implement the cost action into one of our projects. So in terms of the cost action cooperation in European science and technology, there are a number of initiatives around this. So this comes under the Horizon Europe framework, which is something like 80-odd billion euros over a 10-year period. And within this EU Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, there have been previously these FP7 projects, which have now come to an end. And within the EUCOST, these are focusing on training and networking only. And this really is a springboard to getting further funding for, say, Horizon Europe projects. Individuals who are young researchers might want to apply for fellowships or grants and training and, say, PhD positions with other funding initiatives within the EU framework. So in terms of this science and technology, what we're trying to do here is to build networks of networks, bring partners into collaborative projects around a whole range of themes and domains. It's a bottom-up approach, looking at more from a scientific angle, young researchers, but the PI is often an academic within a university. We're also trying to engage with NGOs, academics outside Europe, in the US, Far East Asia, Africa, and also bring in advisory board members from industry as well. And one of the key criteria is within the EU, there must be a number of partners as a minimum criteria, but also buy-in from other, say, members, which what we call near neighbor members, and also further outside Europe as well. So we have a truly global reach within the EU. We have a number of countries which are actively involved. All of this, in fact, in terms of project formulation and templates, are on the EUCOST platform. It's a very simple application where you put together a 12-page documentation around the project, and then it's reviewed relatively quickly. In fact, the deadline for the next round is in this month. And once you have a number of projects which are ready for, say, submission, then each cost member who we are trying to get into our consortia will get an email, and then they will actually become what we call a second proposer. So in terms of the networks, we are funding not research itself. That really relies on existing groups where there may be their own funding, but it's really to focus on networking and building research capacities around, say, young researchers in particular. As a prerequisite, yesterday in the breakout sessions, there's a lot of discussion around data integrity, types of data. So what we do is have a survey at the beginning of the project to make sure all the data types are relatively homogeneous. Everyone understands what they are generating and what is the aim of the project. And we have an overseeing memorandum of understanding as well. Typical cost actions are 4 years, and we have a number of countries which are involved. And our aim is really to build, progress from science and technology projects ultimately into packages of data which could move into research and development projects, which could attract their own funding at a later stage. Within each cost action project, we have an MC committee member. So in fact, for our cost action, OneHealthdrugs, Paola Costi, which I'll discuss in a minute, is in fact the PI, and I'm representing her here. And annual meetings are held at various sites within the consortia, what we call management committee meetings. We have working group meetings as well. And from the young researchers, in terms of trying to make them more adept, more suitable for the employment market, is provide training schools, which are a few days long, and also conferences and workshops as well. We also have this initiative around STSM, short-term scientific missions, where applicants can apply, generally young researchers, for between, say, a few weeks up to 2 or 3 months at one of the other institutes, and they can actually get an understanding of, say, multidisciplinary nature of research as well. And there's a lot of dissemination that goes on as well. Post-COVID, a lot of meetings have moved virtually. So before there will be multiple meetings per year, that really has cut back considerably. There's typically just 1 or 2 meetings per year face-to-face. So in terms of the benefits, it's really a springboard and a stepping stone to getting further funding from the EU. If you've been involved in a cost action, the chances of getting funding for a Horizon Europe project, which is typically a 10-fold increase in budgeting, your chances of success are increased many times, probably 10 times larger. So there are many projects which actually fail in the Horizon Europe initiative for whatever reason, and often they are told to reapply for a cost action to build its network and then reapply for a larger scale project. It's typically a one-stage application, relatively quick turnaround, relatively short application. So it's a good initiative from our perspective. And some of the success stories I'll come on to as well. That's just an overview of the cost action itself. So just focusing on one current project that we're actually involved in. So Paola Costi is the coordinator of this OneHealthdrugs project. And we have a webpage, and some of the discussion points from yesterday were around data integrity. What we typically generate are high quality data to make sure they are fair, compliant in terms of findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So we have a members login where we can store some project data beyond the scope of the project, even when it's finished. And within this OneHealthdrugs project, what we are trying to do is, from a pharmaceutical angle, look at the fate of drugs from the synthesis angle all the way through to excretion and what its impact is on the environment, on plants, and on the water system as well. So this is a 4-year project that's been running for roughly 2 years. Mirrored with each project webpage is in fact the full information regarding the project from the EUCOST as well. So you can actually find out the memorandum of understanding. And in fact, it's a very open project platform. We encourage others to apply and join our cost action. And it's a very simple process. You simply click on a button, fill in some forms, and then the coordinator will see, and then we have a meeting to discuss what their role could be. So typically with one cost action project, there are a number of working groups. We have a working group leader, and within the project, we have a management committee from each nation within Europe, a management committee member, and a substitute as well. And just some examples of the sort of training and workshops that we've run and the sort of what we can access. So in the UK, we have Diamond, the synchrotron, which is UK's largest flagship synchrotron. Billions of pounds worth of investment has gone into this infrastructure. And we were able to access this as part of a training school and a workshop. And this was really led by the young researchers. So we had roughly 30 young researchers who presented posters. We were given a full tour of the facility. And this could be really an opportunity where young researchers, having seen the facility, can apply for an STSM and spend, say, 3 months there on their project. And we've got a global reach. So in terms of the OneHealthdrugs, we were able to invite speakers from the US. So Brian Brooks from University of Baylor, he was invited to give a presentation on his specific expertise around OneHealthdrugs and chemistry and contamination. And we actively looking at the US because we understand in terms of, we typically use PubMed for extracting information from research papers, but we are also looking at the EPA for databases, at least from the OneHealthdrugs perspective, for compounds which are problematic from an environmental perspective. And there are lots of other databases in the US from the NIH that we extract information from. So we understand that data curation of a high quality is really essential. What we typically generate is data, and it must be fair, compliant, and transferable and reusable. And another thing that we ran last month was a training school in Poland. And again, there's a lot of outreach towards North Africa to try and encourage those individuals who can get full reimbursement from the cost projects funding. And then we ran training schools around lab work and also lectures as well. And we try and bring into the training schools experts from their field. So within Poland, we were able to engage with a company that's actually building water desalination plants and purifying water for the whole Polish country itself. And we were able to bring that person in and give some insight on from an industrial perspective on the OneHealthdrugs. I've noticed that there was a meeting last month from the Cost Action and also NSF and others in New York. And one of the things that also sort of learned from the breakout sessions is data integrity. In the EU, we have gone from data being very complicated, unusable, not reproducible, and we have come up with these fair guidelines, which we try and implement and force people to go down. So prior to any project, we have what we call a survey to collect all types of data that will be generated within the project. We have a data management plan, which everyone needs to really adhere to once they've bought into this. And just to sort of stretch it a bit further, the OneHealthdrugs project is a cost action funded project. We had a project prior to this, which was funded by the FP7. And that was actually run from 2014 to 2017. The project finished many, many years ago. And in fact, Paola Costi was the coordinator for that project as well, looking at neglected tropical diseases, similar to the cost action, but not looking at the environmental perspective. So in terms of data integrity, we make sure that for every project that we try to build consortia for, there is a partner who is a data scientist expert, and also they have databases where we can store data beyond the scope of the project. So we don't want to lose that information if it's not being deposited in, say, some public database. So within this project, we had a particular group from Heidelberg, and they were developing a platform which is still running now, publicly accessible without any login, and they can in fact download all the data information that we have. And this is highly curated. All the data that's been uploaded is in a format which is FAIR compliant, and anyone can go there and actually download this platform. But we understand having these platforms have to be funded. You need all the infrastructure and expertise to run this. So that's where I end. I've given you a flavor of the cost action itself and one example project, which currently is a cost action, but because of the network perspectives, we were able to get funding from the EU for a bigger project as well. And really what we want to do is, beyond this current cost action, engage with other networks, including folks in the US, and say apply for a Horizon Europe project if there's a call around OneHealthdrugs or something similar to that. So thanks for listening, and there's some more presentations coming up.
Right, our next speaker is Susana Soares, talking about the future of plant-based food, bridging the gap of new proteins and FLAVOURsome.
Thank you so much for having us here and having this opportunity to present what we are doing in the EU and try to find some networking and collaborations here in the US. And so I will present FLAVOURsome first. Okay. First, for those who are not familiar with food system, I bring some numbers. Because our food system is not working properly, and it has really a drastic scenario now. We need to increase the food production by 80% by 2100 if we want to provide food for an increasing world population. But the food system that we have right now is already responsible for at least 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity loss, habitat loss, and deforestation. So our food system, how it works right now, it is not working and needs profound changes. And along the years, these changes have been trying to be put in place, having different perspectives. At the beginning, it was considered to increase the production, and so research was quite focused on increasing crops and livestock productivity and yield. In the last years, those strategies were shown to not work. And so there was a shift to holding down consumption. So trying to provide less food loss, food waste, as well as a more efficient use of water resources. But that is also not working well. And so more recently, it has become increasingly important dietary shifts. But the question is how we can make consumers adhere to these dietary shifts. There is no question that dietary shifts will be critical to provide a more sustainable food system. There are huge studies that support this, but it's not a matter of everybody turning vegetarian or vegan. It is a matter of decreasing the intake of meat or animal-based food. And so what people do that work on this field, they make consumer surveys to understand what consumers want in new food products. And interestingly, taste is consistently reported as the top purchase driver. So people don't care so much about healthfulness, environmental sustainability, whatever. If it does not taste good, people will not buy it, will not eat it. And so this is just to show you that flavor and taste could be critical tools to make a profound change in our food system. And so apart from being very important, it is also important to have in mind that a very different range of stakeholders work to solve flavor problems. We are talking about food industry, nutrition and health, food science and technology, consumer and social sciences, which have in their background a lot of different expertise, multidisciplinarity. And so the question was, how can we bring those different stakeholders, those different disciplines to move forward on taste knowledge to make a profound change in the food system. And so this was why FLAVOURsome was born. And FLAVOURsome was born based on a proposal that had these 5 different key questions. From one side, we want to look at food, plant-based food. We want to understand the synergies or antagonisms of the compounds that occur in the different foods, how the interactions occur. We want to use this knowledge to understand how can we leverage processing technologies to make pleasant food without masking ingredients. So under a clean label umbrella and minimum processing umbrella also, because it's not because the food is plant-based that it's healthy. No, you need to have less ingredients or natural present ingredients and minimum processing. We want to use this knowledge of these two key questions to know how can we modulate and mitigate unpleasant taste properties and build tools, artificial intelligence tools, to predict the flavor output of a specific food product. We want to understand the interactions inside our oral cavity and the physiological mechanisms by which different people perceive flavor and how the neuroperception of flavor occurs. And of course, that we also want to move forward on to promote educational activities toward not only the scientific community but consumer, young people, schools, to make sure that people adhere to plant-based food. They understand that their daily base choices on food have a profound impact, not only on their health, but also on the environmental health. To achieve the answers to these key questions, we have set 5 different working groups. The first one is more related to the chemical and physical chemical profile of food matrices. There is a huge amount of data regarding these working groups. So What this working group is doing, they are reviewing the available data. They are putting everything together to be a part of a curated database to make sure that we have high quality data. And in addition, they are trying to establish standard operation protocols for this analysis so that we can use the whole scientific community that is already working on this to have some standards on the analysis that they get. So to make sure that we have high quality data and not just data. Working Group 2 is dedicated to the translation of multimodal oral processing because you have a lot of people that are working in very narrow specific topics of flavor perception, like receptors, for example. But we need to bring together people that work at the brain level, for example. So this working group aims to bring multidisciplinarity of physiological and neuroscientists and psychologists working together. Working Group 3 is focused on food, oral rheology and tribology because these two properties are usually overlooked. So most of people that work in taste don't care about texture, but it has a profound and a huge impact how people perceive food. Working Group 4 is related to the development of models to be implemented in food industry. So what we want is that the knowledge, the basic knowledge that we have about the way that we perceive food could be used to develop biosensors that can be used by food industry for a real-time monitoring of food flavor so that they can put in real-time measurements to modulate or to mitigate unpleasant taste properties. And finally, the last working group is dedicated to dissemination and communication with engaging society and consumers. We have now more than 300 members, more than 30 cost members, and we have partners both from academia and industry. As Sheraz was telling you about, the management of cost actions occurs through the core group, that has to have gender balance, career stage balance, diversity in countries. And in addition to the core group, we have set up an external advisory board with some partners already from US because flavor is a topic that is so different in worldwide. So we want to bring experts from different parts of the world to be working with us and provide guidance on our activities. Here I present some of the partners that we already have, like the Good Food Institute, Wageningen University, Technic University of Munich, Nestle, and we are just finishing the first year. So we had just some few activities so far. We promote an advanced training school in which students were able to go to Wageningen University and bring their own samples to test on a tongue on a ship. So it's a ship that it has different receptors that we have in the mouth, and so they can see which receptors were being activated by their own samples. We had a satellite event at one of the biggest conferences in flavor. And we had also a workshop in which we invited some of the most important food industries to discuss with us, to present their own challenges and to have some roundtables, brainstorming sessions, and how we can help them to overcome the flavor challenges. And so that's it. If you want to join us, if you want to collaborate with us, you can visit our site, you can send emails, and we will be looking forward to work with more US partners. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Alexander Monzon, talking about the EUCOST project, Non-globular proteins in the era of machine learning.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Marisa, for inviting us to participate in this nice event. It was really nice to do some networking with colleagues we haven't met before. So my course action or our course action is called Machine Learning for Non-globular Proteins. And before starting, I will provide you some overview of what protein is about. So if we think about structural bioinformatics or structural biology, one of the, let's say, biggest problems until a few years ago was the relationship between that we have between protein sequence, protein structure, and functions. You have heard about proteins. The proteins are composed by 20 different amino acids. And these amino acids determines the primary sequence of the proteins that is intrinsically related with the structure that this protein will adopt. And consequently, this structure will perform or will deliver some particular function. But it's not about something that it gets structured like a block, like a rock, because proteins are dynamic systems. So they also, to perform this function, they need some dynamism. For example, the hemoglobin that most of us know, at least by name, it has two different conformation or different states. One which is bound to the oxygen, one is unbound to the oxygen. But this is about the proteins that are well known or well studied that in general are associated with enzymes. There is what we call globular proteins. This is something that happened this 2 weeks ago. Mostly, you know that the Nobel Prize for Chemistry was for three researchers, David Baker, Nemis Hassabis, and Johan Jumper, because basically they were able in some point to decode this relationship between protein sequence and protein structure. David Baker, due to his contribution of protein computational design, and Denis Hassabis and John Jumper is because of AlphaFold. Most of you probably have heard about AlphaFold. That is Google DeepMind development. It's an AI that is able to predict protein structure from sequence. And the main revolution on this topic was, you know, that there is the CASP is a critical assessment of structural prediction. It was an experiment that was running for many years in order to evaluate the current performance of the state-of-the-art method to predict protein structures. And if you can see here, until let's say just 2016, the performance were more or less stable, around the 40% of accuracy. But with the first version of AlphaFold in 2018, the performance rise up the 60%. And even more, because this experiment is every 2 years. In 2020, with AlphaFold 2 was a huge revolution because the score or the performance of AlphaFold was close to 90%. And this is a very, let's say, the quality of these structure models, because our computational model was very, very close to the experimental determined structure that if you're not aware of, determining protein structure through experiment is quite difficult. I mean, it's really time consuming because experiment like X-ray crystallography, cryo-electron microscopy, or NMR are expensive, are also very time consuming. So AlphaFold was a revolution in our field of structural bioinformatics and structural biology, in the way that at some point was able to predict any structure of the protein or protein sequence that we knew at the moment. But again, there is still, sorry, oh, too fast. Okay, but again, there's still a whole range of proteins. So this plot shows the fraction of residues that are predicted by AlphaFold. This is only for human proteome with high confidence. This means that these structural models are very accurate or very close to experimental ones. But if we see there is between 0.65% and 1, there is a fraction of residues that are not well predicted. This is what in general are associated to intrinsically disordered regions or in certain proteins. And this is what our course is about. Okay. It's turning off. Okay. So AlphaFold solved these things of as an iceberg, this tip of the iceberg is about globular proteins. But if we look at more in deep, there's a whole world of proteins that we call non-globular proteins. There are proteins that, in principle, they don't need a well-defined three-dimensional structure to perform function. And these particular proteins are highly represented in higher correlated proteomes, but also they're related in many neurodegenerative diseases, as Alzheimer, Parkinson, Huntington, amyloidosis, brain diseases. So they're quite important from disease research and from the biological function point of view. So this cost action, when we started 2 years ago, was exactly at the point when AlphaFold was released. So the the background that we proposed was, okay, there's still dark region, so it's not everything solved. There are still dark regions in protein that we don't know the structure and we need new methods. The major challenge of these proteins is that they don't have a well-defined structure, so they are also have different heterogeneous states to perform the function, and also low complexity sequences that this difficults a lot the prediction of the actual methods. The experimental structure also for these particular proteins, because they have been less studied than the globular ones, is very limited and also is quite widespread in the world. So there are sometimes for intrinsically disordered proteins, there are well-defined repositories, but for the other kinds of proteins like tandem repeat proteins, aggregation, there are still yet not well-defined repositories. Even for the different experimental methods that we use to address the structural behavior of this protein. For example, there's many experimental methods that are not covered at the moment. So for example, a single molecule FRET is one method that is used to address this protein. And basically, the idea of this action is to try to establish a network between computer science and bioinformaticians and structural biologists in the way that the experimental framework can be designed in a standardized way in order that that information can be used to develop novel computational methods. And also, the final aim of this is obviously to describe the function of these proteins and his biological properties. The cost action is structured in 5 working groups. The first working group is related to getting the experimental information, the primary experimental data, and doing a proper generation, curation, and the position of the data in the makes that this data is available for our researchers. Working group 2 is about promoting integrative structural biology. That is how we can combine machine learning approaches to improve the data generation of this particular field. Working group 3 is about benchmarking the state-of-the-art machine learning methods on this field. And working group 4 is about how we can translate all this information into characterization of biological function. And finally, working group 5 is how we will disseminate, communicate, and the result of this action. So this is the working group of the cost action. It's a similar structure of what has been shown before by my colleagues. We have the core group. We have different leads and colleagues representing different from different countries and different expertise. And the network at the moment, it has 70 in the management committee, 67 members with 37 countries. We have more than 300 members around Europe and also in US. Also representing around 43 countries. And during these 2 years, we have been organized different events. We usually have a main event, a main conference about machine learning and non-globular proteins each year, and also one training school. But then we organize many workshops that are particularly focused on some topic related with our cost. And we try to bring together experts to discuss future challenges and to provide also sets on guidelines or how to proceed in this field. That's all, and many thanks for your attention. And again, if you would like to join, this is the website of our course, and this is the QR code also to the website. Thank you very much.
Our final presenter is Natasa Vaidianu, Rethinking the Blue Economy, Socio-Ecological Impacts and Opportunities.
Hello. Okay, so thank you very much for invitation and thank you for having me here. And it's a great pleasure to present our action, our cost action. I'm an action member and the chair is from Croatia, Dražen Čepić. And when we started, actually we ran in starting with 2016 another cost action. I was also a member of that one, and it was on ocean governance. And after Rio, when blue economy concept was discussed, we saw a lot of approaches, I can say. So I yesterday and the day before yesterday, I talked with different people from the room, and I found out that in US, this blue economy concept is not so well advanced like in Europe, and why? And my thinking is that we have in Europe a lot of directives. So regarding the one of them is on maritime special planning, and next week we will celebrate 10 years of maritime special planning directive implementation in all member states. So EU member states. So maybe this is the reason we in Europe are more advanced, but I can say from the beginning that there are countries where this directive is not implemented yet after 10 years. So there are some challenges. And just to discuss in brief, what is this economy concept actually? We all know that oceans are covering more than 70% of our of Earth's surface, and there are we saw yesterday that there are a lot of ecosystems, and they are home to diverse to human settlements, and according to the United Nations Environmental Program, about 60% of the world's population lives within 60 kilometers of the coast, and this proportion will rise to 75% within 2 decades. So we know that for centuries, oceans have generated activities, and they are a major source of food and employment, and provide natural communication, transportation, and energy. And this ocean economy is also called the blue economy. The term was introduced, as I already said, at the Rio 20 conference in 2012. At the beginning, in starting with 2017, actually in Europe, we set the policy named Integrated Maritime Policy, and we at that time we discussed about the blue growth, and after that, starting with 2020, we shift a little bit, and we change the approach, and we are not speaking anymore about blue growth, and we are now speaking about blue economy. Why? Because the word growth, it was like exploring more the oceans in a not sustainable way. So from that reason, blue growth is not used anymore. And the concept of blue economy relates to the exploitation, preservation, and the regeneration of the marine environment. And this can include wide range of economic sectors, from the more conventional fisheries, aquaculture, maritime transport, coastal tourism, and marine-related industries, to the emergent sectors such as deep sea mining, offshore wind farms, or different other, or like bio economy and other things. But despite numerous initiatives addressing maritime issues and the blue economy, the field, we discovered this, the field remains fragmented by national and disciplinary boundaries, including division among researchers focusing on different sectors of the blue economy. Therefore, it is essential to create and strengthen research networks to promote and facilitate comparative and collaborative research. And this is actually also our goal, I can say, as an action to be here and to have and to promote actually collaboration with US universities. So we just started our action last autumn. Actually, first kickoff meeting was in November in Brussels, but we actually started with our first, we organized our first conference in April in Croatia, in Zadar. So it's quite fresh, yeah. What we decided to how we decided to start actually to have a face-to-face conference. Even the funds are not so big. We received for the first year 120,000 euros. So, and only for that conference, we spent more than 80,000 euros. So it's not so, wasn't so easier to have such a big conference, because we decided in the management committee what to do, to have a first conference in order to meet each other face to face and to build trust in order to have all on board during the next 4 years. And we said, yes, we need this. And after that, this conference was like a start. And after that, all the meetings were online in order to save money for more training schools and involving more the early career scientists. So, as I already said, our action centers on, actually there are two main goals: to assess the impact of the blue economy on coastal societies, and to explore opportunities deriving from innovations and potential synergies between established and emergent marine activities. As a background, as you can see, we saw that little attention paid to social impact and consequences, and you will see in the next slides what are our issues. So we also have 5 working groups within the action. First one is actually mainly on maritime occupations, food. The second one, food security and sustainable blue consumption. The third one, where I'm a co-leader of this one, on port cities and coastal communities. A fourth one on fisheries governance and emergent activities, and the last one on climate change and the natural hazard. So I just want briefly to explain them. So first one is focused on employment and careers, and in different sectors of the blue economy, such as fisheries or other occupations. The second one on food security, and our main focus is on value chains, trade and consumption of blue products, for example, seafood, and also services like transport and tourism. The third one on port communities, because they are deeply connected with the local spaces. And also our keynote speaker in the morning mentioned that culture is very important, and it's very important to know actually the local characteristics in order to create how to say, compatible, I can say, measures. The fourth one on fisheries, and there are a lot of governance challenges within the EU member states. And the fourth one on climate change, because we are all aware of this and is here. Yeah, this is our Gantt chart. So you can see that we have a lot of activities during the 4 years, and mainly on capacity building. You can see there research collaboration. So we don't have money for proper research, but only for this kind of activities, as you already heard also yesterday in AccelNet. We have a lot of participants. You can see we have 345 members already from 38 countries. So a lot of the action is very big already. So yeah, what we already done, you can see that we had some short-term scientific missions, and we have 2 participation in ITC conferences. And what we are planning to do by the end of this year and next year, we already started to work together and in order to publish some joint papers. So, oops. It was the last slide. Yeah, so this was the kickoff in Brussels on 1st November 2023. And here are our latest updates on the website. So please visit our website in order to see what progress we do, and please join us. I already identified some people in the room with blue economy interests. Thank you.
All right, thank you to all of our speakers. I think we can make time for a few questions. So if you have a question, please come up to one of the side mics. Don't all jump up at once. And then we'll just pass.
This is probably more a question for Karen and Alan. I mean, I'm the PI of AccelNet Multinet, but when I was in Europe before I came back here, I was the vice chair of EUCOST action. The action was No Escape, by the way, but it was short for Knowledge Landscape. So I mean, we play with it, but we like this. So I know that the NSF and the EUCOST program have been engaging in discussions, and I was wondering what's the status of their discussions is, if we can expect some initiatives. Perhaps you can address this in when you deliver your final remarks. And I'm glad to help in this case. Thanks a lot for coming.
Thanks for sharing. This is really interesting, and I've appreciated learning more about cost programs. My question is, all of the ones I've heard about seem to be very Europe-based and Europe-focused, but of course we live in a globalized world, right? We've heard a lot about collaborations of these AccelNet projects with the Global South and other areas. Is there thinking within the Cost Action Network about how to collaborate more broadly beyond Europe and to leverage these funding mechanisms to do so?
Sure. So with the cost action, there is no defined category in terms of a call. any project could be proposed. And really, it's a network within networks. Often people who are building a consortia from within their own networks to try to bring in the minimum criteria from within Europe. And from there, they try and stretch out to, say, Africa, US. But it's really from the network perspective, the PI who's applying, they need to have their own network and interactions with various partners, which has worked in some cases, but there's a long way to go in terms of really getting traction from the US. So that there's still a lot of bridges to build there. Experience.
Yeah, I had the same feeling. So the partners that are already part of the action from US, they were already in my network because they don't here. You don't know exactly what is cost and how you can collaborate with us. So I had to make some connections of connections and connections to get them on board. But they can be active members in a cost action. You can also fly to EU for meetings, for workshops, to be trainers, for example, in training schools. So we can have people all over the world, actually. And that is the idea. But sometimes outside Europe, people don't know what is cost and what does it support. So I think it's a lack of knowledge. And so this brings an extra effort to the action share to reach to all the globe parts.
I just want to add that we have some associated countries in our coast action, and they are coming actually from Middle East. So we don't have countries from Africa, for example, or other or Latin America or Global South, I can say. But we have some associated countries from Middle East. So yeah, we try to enlarge our cost action as big as possible.
Thank you so much for the interesting talks. I particularly resonated with the one on flavor, in part because we're using it also as sort of an inroad to teaching children mindfulness and things like self-regulation, because flavor is something you can focus on in such a beautiful way, and it's cross-cultural, in addition to many of the plant-based nutrients having a great impact on the brain and brain development. So I really resonated with that. I was wondering if this is sort of for the NSF program directors, is there waste money for trainees to attend cost meetings? I saw the calls for PIs. Okay, sorry. Okay. But anyway, I feel like there are inroads in things other than food to collaborate with your flavor network. Very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure it's a daunting crowd, all these sea of faces, and so really appreciate that you came here to tell us about your cost actions and the cost actions more broadly. I'm curious, that there's some overlap with your specific groups, and there's a small set-in that you just found out about this. How do you have recommendations for us for how to best find different groups that might be overlapping? I was looking at the website, and there's a lot of cost actions. And so is it, just doing some search terms, or is there some coordinating person that as we want to reach out to think about how there might be handshakes? What recommendations do you have for us for trying to find relevant cost actions for us?
Well, I recognize it's quite difficult to find a cost action, even knowing how costs work. No, I mean, in general, if you have some colleagues or contacts in Europe that you know that they are working on some particular topic, you can go and see if they are involved in some particular cost action, just looking, searching by names or name on the cost website. Then you can try to search on the website for using some keywords to see. Also, I do sometimes to see if there are some keywords or people working with proteins machine learning on the cost website. But because the main different thing regarding cost of the Accelerating Network project is cost is not focused on institution, it's focused on people. So it's not that we have people that they're working in the institution, they can work also in company, but the network itself is open. So it's not bound. There are no boundaries with institutions. So this is the main thing. So it's also a way to search on the website.
And on the cost webpage, you do have the project officers, and that's very transparent. You can email those people and ask for specific questions or specific projects that you're looking for. But I also had the same problem. I went on the NSF webpage to look for any projects that we might have synergies. I think there's a big gap in terms of search tools for everything in every project.